I've always been interested, I think everyone really is, but in kindness and love and getting along, and why can't we have, love and peace in the world instead of having so much of the opposite. But in Buddhism, in the Tibetan schools, they talk about, so enlightenment is the ultimate goal. And so enlightenment is the end of all of our different kinds of suffering and wants and desires, and it's like total fulfillment. In Tibetan, sometimes I like to tell people about Tibetan words because the Tibetans had a language before they discovered Buddhism, and that language was a distant cousin of Chinese. And so it was a language very much like the Native American languages, and a culture very much like Native American cultures that we have, like the Native Americans in Montana, for instance. In eastern Montana, there's a big plain, and so a lot of the Tibetans are nomadic. So in the teachings, there's a lot of metaphors having to do with the natural world and the love of the natural world. And one of them, they say the bird that flies to enlightenment has two wings. And one of the wings is love and compassion, and the other is wisdom and insight. And so then the process of meditation actually is a vehicle, it's a way to become who we really are. One of the important teachings that I like very much is that we're actually living in a reality where there are two realities. We think that there's just one, but there's actually two. There's an ultimate nature of reality, and then there's an ordinary nature of reality. So for instance, Newton came up with a lot of the rules, laws of how the physical world works. And they're all valid. And the Buddha said he doesn't have any problem with that ordinary reality. He's not going to say that's wrong or anything. And so Newton, and at the beginning of modern science, discovered all these things. And I like to say that's about relative reality. So they're all true. There is such a thing as gravity. And if I drop my mouse, it's going to hit the floor and probably break. But then there's another reality as well. And so now science and math are becoming so advanced that they're starting to intersect with the spiritual philosophies of the world. And it was nothing's really black and white, but primarily the East, India and China and Japan and Korea, for instance, and Vietnam and all of Southeast Asia, not just Buddhism, but Hinduism and the Jain tradition and Taoism, they've been very much concerned with this other reality that you could call the ultimate reality. So that's the dimension of the spiritual truth and spiritual realities there. And so then ordinary people, we're kind of living in those two realities, but most people haven't been taught about the inner reality, especially in the West, in Europe and America. They haven't been taught about that very much. Actually, the 60s brought in a renaissance of interest in what I sometimes call the wisdom of the East, all these different traditions that I just mentioned. So one of the things that we have to do as human beings, and then no one knows there's a lot of mystery about life. And it's, some people think that certain books have all the answers, but some of those books were written thousands of years ago, so they're not very good at talking about contemporary problems. How about global warming, or racism, or sexism, or these things like this, ageism. So then part of the human task, if I could say, acting like I know, but it's a theory that I subscribe to, that we need to integrate these two dimensions, the spiritual dimension and the physical, ordinary world dimension. And if we just let the ordinary world dimension go by itself, it kind of gets crazy, because then you have, the incredible pollution that we have in the world today, and global warming and all of these problems. That's people mostly fixated on how they can have more money and power and take care of themselves more. And they're not paying attention to the fact that we're all interconnected, and we're even interconnected with the elements like fire, water, earth, air, and the space, right? And so
Right.
we used to live in LA, and one time